Okay, it is 6:30, and welcome to week 4, critical issues in criminal justice. And I'm going to spend a little time going over some of the things that are taking place for this week's assignment. So I'm just going to start out by sharing my screen. Okay, so you are familiar with this page. Remind you of your requirements, and also letting you know that our next lecture will take place in week 6. There will not be a lecture next week. And here is where we are now. Goals of gangs and homicide. So you're going to read chapter 6 through 8, Visions for Change, Crime and Justice in the 21st Century, and the section on gang violence and gang questions. I'll cover some of that. Be sure to participate in the discussion assignment, Who's for Stricter Gun Laws? Your initial post course was due Tuesday night, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard, and your reply posts are due Saturday by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Finally, be sure to complete the written assignment, Criminal Justice Issues Project. Submit your rough outline and thesis, and so you want to make sure you get that done. You don't have to worry about the mid-quarter survey. I mean, unless you want to, but anyway, there is one. And then adversity is the springboard to success. That's my motto. And so I have been through a lot to get to where I am, and I share with my students if they need to hear my little story. So let's go right into the calendar. So the calendar is right here. And your reading assignment for Monday for the week, your initial post, a lecture right now, and okay. And then let's do this. Okay, and then your reply post. And then your written assignment is due on Saturday. Okay, so let's take another look at the course homepage. Okay, so your lectures are 5 to 6 p.m. And so anyway, I will generally be doing them during that time. Sometimes I may do them a little differently since the class is small. Okay, so let's go to our module for week 4. Let's look at the assignments. Of course, your discussion post, and then your critical issues project. Submit your rough outline and thesis. I submitted some information to show you what kind of outline that we're looking for. So you want to make sure that you go through that. And your thesis, it's a rough thesis, because I will submit feedback and then send it back to you so that you'll be able to submit your revised thesis in a couple of weeks. Those are your written assignments. So now let's go to our lesson content. Okay. Let's check something here. Our lesson content. Okay. Okay, so our lesson content says we're going to talk about gains. So we're going to make sure we do that. And then, let me look at something here. Trying to check something out while I'm talking to you. And then, okay. All right. Okay. I think that is wrong. Give me 1 second here. I'm looking at some notes. And, okay. Okay, now we got it. All right. So now let's look at the assignments again. You see what the assignments are: gang violence. And then you're reading. So let's talk about gang violence. Gang violence. I, as a lawyer, represented gangs for many years as a criminal defense lawyer, and I can tell you that the gangs have gotten more and more violent. I remember coming up as a kid, and there were gangs always around us, but those gangs weren't as violent as they are now. And one of the things that brought in the violence was a combination of drugs and guns. And so what came first, the drugs, and probably the one that changed the violence level the most was the introduction of a cheap drug called crack cocaine. And when crack cocaine came into fruition, the gangs began to take ownership and distribution of crack cocaine. And in order to protect themselves, they began to use weapons. And now they're using semi-automatic weapons. They're using weapons that are more powerful than law enforcement is able to use. And that, now one of the problems is that gangs tend to participate in activities of retaliation and drive-bys. And what often happens are individuals who are totally innocent, have nothing to do with it, become victims and killed by bullets. And so it's in the urban areas and small towns. One of the first signs that gangs are in an area, we always explain to people, is the presence of graffiti. There were people who used to send their kids when they ran into gang problems here down south. Well, eventually what happened is that those individuals got down there, and the more of them went down there, and they started recruiting individuals, and the gangs became strong down in the southern part of the country. So now it's an out-of-hand situation, and young people are pressured to join gangs in order to be protected from the gangs or from a rival gang, one or the other. There are people they refer to as neutrons or neutral people. Those are people who are not involved in any gangs. But those individuals generally run into problems because they can be picked off by either of the gangs. So in order to protect themselves, they find themselves joining in the gangs. And the gangs started out originally with 12-year-olds. Now they're going even younger. Even as young as 6 and 7 year olds are getting involved in gangs. It's really ridiculous. And these same individuals are packing weapons. In Chicago, inevitably, as I speak now, you could probably end up, when the weather is nice outside, you can count on a number of shootings. When there are holiday weekends, you can count on extended number of deaths that take place from gang shootings. So some gangs arise out of protection of their communities, and thus the community members may be protective of gang activity. That's not really very much what's taking place today. But gang violence leads to homicides, and I already said about drive-by shootings. It's one of the major concerns that the criminal justice system has to address. And so many youth are being tried as adults now because of the kind of offenses that are taking place. And in order to combat gangs, a number of things have come about, such as increased police presence and patrolling. Well, that is taking place as we speak in the city of Chicago and in other major urban areas. However, the problem is that there are not enough police officers. There's not enough funding to hire police officers. And so now what has happened now is that many urban areas such as Chicago, Detroit, and other areas are reaching out to the federal government to provide help and requesting, in some instances, for the National Guard to assist in patrolling. And it reaches a stage almost where we'll have martial law. But unfortunately, we find ourselves in our urban communities and now in the suburban communities with a big problem on our hands, and that is a problem, the safety of seniors and other individuals, children who are, and youth who are not involved in gangs. And so with the increased police presence and patrolling, yeah, it has reached a stage where it has some effect. But you should know this. Many of the gangs now, they don't care. They don't even fear the police. In fact, part of the gang initiations oftentimes has to do with killing a police officer or a member of a police officer's family or something along those lines. So the increased police presence and patrolling, they're putting cameras on the corners of the streets. Almost every business now has cameras to be able to record people coming in and out of these places. But once again, the increased police presence and patrolling has not exactly put a real dent into the gang and homicide problem. Mandatory arrest for domestic violence. Well, that's kind of a smaller thing because it was thought that, well, if you start dealing with domestic violence, you could arrest people then in situations where they wouldn't participate in gang activity. But that's very minor. It's not very big. Domestic violence shelters goes right along with that. Once again, remember what we're talking about. We're talking about gangs. We're not talking about spouses and significant others going at it with each other. Stricter gun control. That's one of the issues that's still open to debate between the people who want to carry weapons. Every jurisdiction now in the United States, with Illinois becoming the last one, now have carry conceal. And some jurisdictions, I think like Texas, they have open carry of weapons. So it's kind of like the Wild West situation here. There are crimes now that are taking place with guns, and guns are convenient method for individuals to use to kill large masses of people. So, as I said, these have all failed. Now, regarding another reason why individuals join gangs is because they were either neglected or abused at the home, and the gang provided acceptance or became a family to these individuals, and they became very, very loyal to them. In fact, the loyalty extended so much that if you transgress against the gang loyalty, you would have what we call a violation. And a violation is not like something you wrote down on paper. You will actually sometimes be beaten so badly that you survive. Your mind may be gone, or you may not make it and may die. And so that's how gangs maintain loyalty within the fear. And so one of the rare outs that I know of, and I've seen it because I've done it before, is I've taken young men particularly into situations that they wanted to get out of gangs and they wanted to become Christians or religious. Well, the gangs would respect that, but they would also tell that person that if they found out they were playing a game with it, then they would kill them execution style. And I actually sat in the room and heard that being told to a young man who decided he would go, and he ended up going in a new direction. The point of the matter is that the gang violence problem is enormous. Education, people say more education of individuals may change that. Unfortunately, the gangs will have a tendency to kill young males and females who want to get education and don't want to participate in their gang activity as well. So they take ownership of communities and areas, and it's really bad. I've watched areas, particularly in the Chicago area, change over tremendously when gangs set in. So it is an epidemic proportion that we have right now that we're facing, and doesn't seem to be going down or decreasing anytime soon. So there's a number of things regarding gang questions that I want to conclude with, and these are things that you should know, should be aware of from your reading anyway. The gangs came into existence in the U.S. in the early 1980s with the explosion of graffiti, drugs, and pop music. That's false, because gangs have existed since the 19th century. What has happened is gangs have become more violently in the 20th century, and as I already told you, one of the pivotal things that changed it was the introduction of crack cocaine. The typical age range for a gang member is 18, 14 to 24, 16 to 21, 18 to 35. It used to be 14 to 24. I think now, though, it's really 10. The answer is still 14 to 24. I disagree with that. These statistics are probably old because, to be honest with you, they start gangs around 12. Now they're starting earlier. And one of the reasons why they're starting them earlier is because of the fact that young people will not be sentenced for crimes, particularly 6 to 8 year olds. They won't be. They can do things, and then they won't incur any criminal repercussions of a serious nature. So they say B. I have to disagree with that because my experience below 14. I've seen it says 14 to 24. it says they hang around gangs at 12. Now I've seen kids move. So in other words, these statistics are showing that the kids are younger and younger and younger in joining gangs and are joining earlier. It's bad. It's bad. The juvenile court system is booming. Gangs consist of all of the following types of members, except invisible hardcore associates, peripherals. Invisibles, hardcore associates, peripherals. Invisibles are not a type of gang member. Hardcore members commit the crimes and defend the gang's reputation. Associates affiliate with hardcores, and then the peripherals are not gang members, but they affiliate with gang members. These are what we call, a lot of times, wannabes and those situations. But there are different levels in the gangs themselves. A great part of the gang resistance education and training program is to train law enforcement to recognize gang activity, reduce illegal guns, provide students with skills to resist gang influences, and I think it's A, I might be wrong, C is the answer, to provide students with information and skills. That's in the material. I haven't read the material in a while, but the GREAT program is an 8-lesson program that takes place in the schools, and doesn't appear to be working very well. Sanders defined a gang partially as a group willing to kill, claim, and defend property. That is definitely true. Sanders was right, and it demonstrates in many of the things I've said, to defend territory, attack rival gangs, extort or rob money, engage in other criminal activity as associated with their group, and is recognized by itself as its immediate community itself. It's a separate community. So, and this is how law enforcement views gangs. Now, let's look at these terms and match them up. The broadest audience aimed at groups that pose some risk. The broadest audience that aims at groups that pose some risk. Suppression of gang programs, intervention, so that's not it. Suppression of gang programs or intervention. This is not going to be it. Intervention is not it. It's just a basic prevention of gang programs. What aims to reduce gang activity? Suppression. Then intervention is addresses or places that have some problems. And then finally, the last one, the collective work collaborated. The bottom line is that these definitions are what are attempted, but they're theoretical, and they're not practical and don't really have an effect. How do I know that? Because the gangs are still growing and thriving. They're not decreasing. And that's the end of this exercise. So what am I saying here this week? I'm saying that in the full picture that we have here, gangs are very, very active. They're a serious threat. They represent a critical issue in criminal justice. If a student was to do some research on gangs and write a paper, you'd learn some really interesting things. I, as a lawyer, represented several gangs, and they weren't gangs in the same territory. but there were gangs in different parts of the town of Chicago. And I can tell you that some of the rules that they have, some of the individuals that they have no fear of anybody. Now, the one persons that they really wanted to protect were the lawyers. Why? Because they need the lawyers. And they used to play these old crazy games. They would have people who would actually accept or take the fall because they were younger, or they had a cleaner record than somebody else, or they weren't as high in the game, and take the fall, those kind of things. And what they would do is those individuals would go in and they would serve their time, and sometimes they would get rubbed out. Now, you know what happened with gangs when you go and you're incarcerated in prisons and jails. One of the battles that the penal system has to deal with is gangs. They have to segregate them, and it's a very, very serious problem, and they don't have the resources to combat them successfully. Sometimes they try to transfer somebody to another location. All that really does is just move them someplace else where they'll have somebody else they communicate with. So the network of gangs is so vast now. It's really a pretty serious issue. So, well, that's about it for me for today. That's all I have. So again, make sure you get that assignment done because it is very, very, very important that you get it. Now, with the completion of that assignment that's due for this week, you want to make sure that you complete and follow this rubric that I provided you. Your thesis, which sums up the main thoughts for a chosen topic in 1 or 2 sentences. You get 5 points for that. Outline maps of introduction and a thesis, critical issue, background presentation of both sides of the issue. Personal stance for improving the administration of justice and conclusion based upon what topic you chose and presented to me in week 2, or week 2, yeah, I think it was. Outline reflects support from research. So I should see some indication that you have research. Don't just give me a brief little thing. And then the standard mechanics for spelling, punctuation, grammar, and writing style for a total of 30 points. And then I will complete and get these back to you by the end of the week so that you will be able to prepare for week 5's project as well. And that's it. That's it. So I'm going to say good night. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me. Okay, good night.